We're pleased to see all your shining faces, and we hope to have a meeting that will be about an hour and a half long. Just let me run through the oh, Phil's here. Good. Okay. Let me run through the agenda, and then we can start. Um, after I kind of do this general presentation, there will be a financial report from David Cohen. Then we're going to introduce our two major discussion topics. We have a presentation by Nick from People's Party about what's happening nationally, and he can give us a really good idea of what's going on there. And since Phil's here, if Nick doesn't show up, Phil, you're on. That will go for a 20-minute presentation and then 10 minutes of Q&A. And what we're asking folks to do, and just keep this in mind, is to put the questions that you have in the chat. Doug will be monitoring the chat and will call on you. Not so much chit chat on the chat as, just having, is making sure that we've got everybody covered in terms of making sure, and we have multiple questions that are the same. We can hone that down. Then from there, after Nick or Phil does the presentation, we will then go to breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. And we're asking that there'll be 4 breakout rooms, and we would like to make sure that, and they'll be going for 15 minutes. And what we'd like to do is ask folks to take notes, and then we'll come back, report out any thoughts, consensus, and then we'll have a discussion about priorities for 2021 and announce a next time of meeting. One thing, just let me say that we know that the last month and a half since we have all met has been really tumultuous for folks. So if folks want to stay on the chat afterward and discuss any feelings or concerns they had, we're happy to do that. We just want to leave it. We want to give as much time to it as people need. So we wanted to make sure that we had time for it at the end of the meeting. So are there any questions about that? Any concerns?
We are recording the meeting, just so people know.
Oh, that's right.
Putting up on our YouTube channel in a couple of days.
Okay, so if we are ready, I'm going to turn this over to David Cohen to talk about what's happening in terms of our finances.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody. I'll do the finances quickly. We have in our PayPal account $122.72. In our checking account, we have $4,684.60. In our rent account, we have $4,255.90. In our common good account, we have $95. And in our CPR political pact for the city of Greenfield, we have $259.69. for a total wealth of $9,422.91. And just let me say, of the money in the checking account, some of that is dedicated to specific purposes. 1,000 of that is for continuation of our municipal socialism conference, and $1,815 is for the housing conference that is coming up in another month or so. So we actually have $1,869.60 in our checking account that is liquid cash. I should remind everyone that as of December 31st, we gave up our office. We had decided we weren't able to use it during this pandemic, and it was costing us a lot of money. So we gave it up, but hopefully in the future, when we're able to meet again in person, we might be able to do something else. And then I'd like to say that we're going to be starting our membership renewal process. As everyone knows, it's a whopping $10 a year. So people will be sending out notices soon, but you could send a check to our post office box, Fccpr PO Box 216 in Greenfield, or you can pay via PayPal or via Common Good. That's it. Any questions? Ann? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I know we have a lot of money in the rent account because we aren't actually paying rent right now. Is the policy just not going to be to collect any rent from the new memberships until we get an office and just put that into the general account?
Yeah, we had been thinking, that people can continue to make donations above the membership. We'll put that into the general account, and we'll really see what our needs are when we come out of this pandemic and see what the rents are. As most people might know, we had a dedicated account for our rent, and we had volunteers who paid extra into that, and that's what paid for all of our rent. And our general feeling was, as long as we could have the membership support paying the rent, it was good to have an office, but we didn't want to do grants or anything like that. So right now, anything extra people would give would go into the general account.
Okay.
Any other questions around that?
There's a question from Mike Novak. Mike? You're muted.
Okay. With memberships, you're going to notify the people who already have renewed?
Yes.
Okay.
You have renewed. You and Penny have renewed early on. You're the champions of the renewal, actually. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So just a quick thing about where we're going. We do want to have a discussion of priorities. We'll have that toward the end of the meeting. It's a beginning discussion. And it's really thinking about what do we as an organization want to do over this next year and possibly even beyond this year, depending on where we're going. We've got some new ideas coming in that we will discuss mostly at a later date. There will be some beginning discussion at the end of the meeting, but we want people to bring what they think we need to do here locally and perhaps regionally to be able to move that forward. And now I'm going to turn it over to Karen to introduce folks from the People's Party.
Hi. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this GA. We have what I think is a pretty exciting meeting. We have two guests from Movement for a People's Party, Nick Branna and Phil Aledo. I'm always afraid that I'm messing it up. Nick is going to be doing the main presentation. He is the founder and national coordinator for Movement for a People's Party. I'm not sure if he's on. I hope he is, but he's going to let us know what this is all about, why there is a need for a third major party. So I'm excited. I hope you are, and I will turn it over to Nick.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Hey, everyone. Wanted to first off say a big thank you for inviting us. And we are just as excited about the potential to collaborate, work together. It's already turning out to be a very big year and very much demonstrating the necessity of the work that we're doing. And so I guess Karen and Susan, should I kind of just, would it be helpful to just do an overview? Do you think that's what people would most appreciate hearing?
Please. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I can start off and then I can turn it over a little bit to Phil, who is on the call with us as our regional coordinator in the Northeast, and also Tiffany, who's with us as well, who is doing electoral strategy. So super glad that they could both join as well. And so as a general kind of overview, I think probably, I think people probably have questions, and so they'll try to spend kind of most of the time, or definitely leave time for questions. I know Susan shared, we have about 20 minutes of presentation and then 10 of Q&A. And so as an overview of the Movement for a People's Party, we started in 2017. I worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign. I was the national political outreach coordinator. I did outreach to the superdelegates from Burlington, trying to convince them to support Bernie Sanders. Obviously, we got very few because many of them are lobbyists. And before that, I had worked on other campaigns. I had worked with John Kerry doing fundraising. I had worked with Terry McAuliffe in his gubernatorial run in Virginia. So in 2017, after the results, after Bernie Sanders was, that primary was rigged against him, a number of us thought that the opposition inside the Democratic Party was too great, and that you couldn't, just like Bernie Sanders had said that we needed candidates who don't take corporate money, we needed a party that doesn't take corporate money. And so myself and other Bernie Sanders staff, delegates, volunteers, we got together and we formed Draft Bernie for a People's Party, which invited Bernie to join us in forming a major new party. This was 2017, of course. And Dr. Cornel West was a big supporter of ours as Draft Bernie for a People's Party. And he and I went on Democracy Now! And invited Bernie to a town hall to discuss it. And we hosted that at American University in September. And Bernie told us that he wanted to run at the Democratic Party at the time, this being 2017. But our members immediately following the conference said that, well, in fact, we have a large majority of Americans now, about 60%, that want a major new party. And we listen to the people when it comes to policies, but the people are also telling us how they want those policies achieved. And this is something that, I've always found remarkable, is that, in fact, there has been a majority in the United States wanting a major new party for several years. It's grown tremendously over the last 2 decades, as has the number of independents. Independents are a large plurality in the country now, and approaching a majority over the 2 major parties. And so that led us to say that, just like we listen to working people when it comes to what policies we want enacted, Medicare for all, with a supermajority of Americans supporting that, or breaking up the big banks, or ending the wars, or getting money out of politics, or a basic income, or abolishing student debt, making higher public education free. All of these things have supermajority support, basically, in the United States. And so just like we take our cues and we follow the lead of the people and those policies that they want, we likewise should follow the lead of the people who are telling us how they want it achieved. The American people are telling us that they don't have confidence that the Democratic and Republican parties can be reformed, and that in fact we need a major new party. And that's why you get in polls consistently 60% and sometimes more people who want a major new party across years. And that's highest among people of color. It's highest among African Americans, 68%, Latinos, likewise higher, as it is for people who are poorer, also higher, and for young people. And so what do all these groups have in common? is that they are the most disadvantaged groups in our society right now. And they're some of the ones that are hurting the most, particularly in the wake of coronavirus, but of course before then. And so our membership voted overwhelmingly to form the Movement for a People's Party, which we are now. And now we're in the process of course, transitioning to the People's Party. And so in last year, over the last year, we tripled our membership, grew explosively. And I think it's very telling that in the wake of the 2016 election, the organizations that grew the most nationally were DSA, Our Revolution, Justice Democrats. In the wake of the 2020 election, the group that has grown the most, and it's not even close, is the Movement for a People's Party. And so, you know, we having tripled our membership to having more than 150,000 members now who are signed up with us. And that speaks to where the progressive movement and the country is moving. And so we have members, of course, in all 50 states. We are building a party that is completely free of corporate money and influence. We hosted the People's Convention in August, a week after the Republican National Convention and the Democratic National Convention. We hosted our own. And we were joined by speakers like Nina Turner, Marianne Williamson, Danny Glover, Governor Jesse Ventura, Chris Hedges, Ryan Knight, and many others. And we were also joined, more than 1 million people watched the People's Convention. And so that was a pretty remarkable moment that told us, you know, again, the hunger that exists for a major new party in the US that is corporate free. At the conclusion of the People's Convention, which began as a 2-hour program, but it became a 5-hour program because of how popular it became and how many remarkable speakers signed on. We cast a vote of viewers that came out 99% in favor of forming a major new party free of corporate money and influence. And so we've taken our mandate from that, and we have been working on that since, and including actually starting the party, which we have done in 2 states now, in Maine and Colorado, and with many others that we're working on right now. We also, since then, since August, we have been working on building hubs across the country. And so we have between 50 and 60 hubs now across the country in about 25 different states. And this is a big priority for us now, building up the local organizing infrastructure to support getting on the ballot, to support local party building local committees and state committees, and also just getting engaged in local community issues, building local community coalitions. All of that is something that we're prioritizing now, and getting ready to support candidates. Because in the midterms, we plan on running congressional candidates. We're working with ballot access and FEC attorneys who to plan out kind of our candidate strategy and our general strategy for ballot access. And so we're looking to run about 15 congressional candidates across the country in 2022. And then using that as a springboard, by getting those members of Congress into Congress, they have the bully pulpit. They can, they won't be answering to Nancy Pelosi. They won't be answering to the party establishment. And so they'll have greater freedom to advocate for progressive issues, and could work either as a caucus or in partnership with some of the progressives that are in the Democratic Party, who we invite and believe will eventually join us in forming a major new party and breaking off from the Democrats to do that. And then that 2022 is a kind of springboard to 2024, where we plan on running a presidential campaign. We plan on having national ballot access at that point, which we're working on now in states across the country, and then running candidates at all different levels as a way, you know, and that's kind of the political revolution. So 2022, as we have it planned right now, is like a springboard that is proof of concept, you know, so that we can emerge from that election with people saying, wow, you know, the People's Party shattered the corporate duopolies, like armor or illusion of invincibility, by electing members of Congress, perhaps electing some others at different levels, and then that emboldening everyone ahead of 2024. And then I'll just share some other basics before I turn it over to Phil and Tiffany, and then we can get to questions, because I know that questions are always the most fun, and you know, people direct us towards exactly what they would like to know. We have an average contribution of $19, which we're very proud of. We only collect money from grassroots, small dollar grassroots donors. We don't take more than $5,000. And so that's the maximum PAC limit. We are a 527 nonprofit organization as the Movement for a People's Party, and we're transitioning to being the actual People's Party. And as I mentioned, we have registered the party in Colorado and in Maine. And getting ballot access is a process of getting hundreds or thousands of signatures, sometimes tens of thousands of signatures in different states. That's the most common process. And happy to talk more about that or any other aspect of it during the questions. We have been covered in the Washington Post, the Guardian, Politico, MSN, The Hill, more than 100 other media outlets. Soledad O'Brien just did a segment on us, in fact, that aired this morning nationally on CBS. And so we're getting a lot of attention for what we're doing. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have an amazing advisory council. We've been joined by figures such as Dr. Cornel West, Susan Sarandon, Rose McGowan, NFL player Justin Jackson, the DSA endorsed Maine State Representative, Mike Sylvester, is leaving the Democratic Party and joining us. We were very excited to announce his support. Likewise, the chair of the Progressive Democrats of Colorado, Mike McCorkle, left the Democratic Party. That was another big kind of defection from the Democratic Party, and joined us. And he's now helping to lead our ballot access and legal efforts. And so these are the kinds of things that are very exciting across the country, and people who are joining us. Others like Chris Smalls, Medea Benjamin, Jimmy Dort, Chase Iron Eyes, Amaya Wengeshi, many amazingly accomplished people. Amaya, for example, she was the Bernie 2020 National High School Director, and she's joined us. Marianne Williamson's student director has also joined us. And so we're very happy to have so many different people coming together with what we're doing. And so Susan is sharing that I have 5 minutes left, and I'm going to turn it over to Phil and Tiffany to fill in a little bit on the parts that they do and anything else that they think that it would be great for you to hear. So I'll hand it over to you, Phil, first, and then Tiffany can talk about our electoral strategy when you're ready.
All right, thanks, Nick. Thanks everybody for allowing us to come on the call and talk a bit about MPP and what we've been doing. My name is Phil Ateto. I'm in Annapolis, Maryland, about 30 miles east of DC. currently helping by coordinating the Northeast regions, as Nick said. And just wanted to add that kind of what's going on in Massachusetts right now. So I see some of our friends from Worcester, our Worcester hub or chapter. And so we have a strong hub in Worcester that's been doing great work. They were similar to your group, that they came, they were already in an organization and a group and joined us. And, you know, they've just continued to do great work from there. And then we have 2 budding hubs that are getting started, one in Boston and one just outside of Boston in the suburbs called Metro West. So with you being in Western Massachusetts, it would kind of be the perfect addition to make Massachusetts a very strong state for the People's Party. And it's also a perfect time because, you know, as Nick mentioned, and I'll pass it over to Tiffany to talk a bit more about, we're getting started with forming state party bylaws and getting things more formally organized in the state. So it's a perfect time to get involved, to be able to give input into that process and into those bylaws. So with that, I will pass it along to Tiffany, perhaps to talk a bit more about the ballot access, ballot access progress and plans for Massachusetts.
All right.
Tiffany.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you everyone for letting us come talk to you today. My name is Tiffany Anning. I live outside of Boston in Westwood, Massachusetts. I am a political outreach coordinator along with Nick, but as he mentioned, I also facilitate and coordinate the electoral strategy circle. And I began this work in August, and I work with a great team of people. And we gathered all the information for all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, and the 5 US territories, to figure out how to, what was necessary for getting ballot access in each state. So we consolidated all of that, or we collected all of that information, and then we created action plans for each state that we're now currently in the process of carrying out in coordination with Phil and the other regional organizers. We currently have ballot access, or the efforts have started in Maine and Colorado, as Nick mentioned, and we're looking to roll out a few more states in the coming weeks. And by the end of 2021, we're hoping to have organizations in all of the states that will allow us to start organizing for ballot access this year. There's a handful of states we have to wait until next year. As for here in Massachusetts, that should be happening soon in the coming weeks, where we'll be, I think we need to get people registered with our party. And so we'll start collecting party registrations to do what we can to get us on the ballot here in Massachusetts. In addition to the ballot access work, the researchers on my team are doing a number of other research projects to prepare us for what it's going to be like to be the next major party. So we're doing research on how to respond to attacks. We're doing research on identifying the best places to run candidates in 2022 and 2024, and just anything else that we need to research. My team is always willing and able to put in some work to help us grow the party. And with that, I will pass it on back to Nick or Karen.
Yeah, is there anyone else that wanted to speak with us? Otherwise, I'm happy to, I think, just kind of open it up for questions, you know, that Tiffany, Phil, or I could take.
So Nick, we had a number of questions coming in the chat, so hopefully we can start with those, and
Sounds great.
And then open it up. So Ann Ferguson had the first one. So Ann, you're on.
Yeah, so can you answer the question about how the Movement for a People's Party connects or compares to other third parties on the left, like the Working Families Party, the Green Party, and so forth?
Yes. And so we are looking to make a clean break with the Democrats. You know, we don't intend to work with them like on fusion balloting like the Working Families Party does, for example. We're forming an entirely separate party, you know, and often the Working Families Party works with Democrats or supports Democrats. We believe that we need an entirely different corporate-free progressive populist party. And then we also believe that a kind of message of universal programs and of a kind of Bernie Sanders style message of economic populism is one that can build the kind of national coalition around issues like Medicare for all, getting money out of politics, free public college, that isn't kind of exclusively, doesn't just exclusively have Democrats as members, but these policies are overwhelmingly popular with Republicans, with independents. And so we're appealing across the political spectrum to build a really, a party for working people, and bringing in people from everywhere to what we're doing. And that also, you know, gets to basically how we're building the party in general.
Okay, next question is Dave Cohen.
Hi. My question basically is, does the MPP consider itself democratic socialist or progressive, if you'd make a distinction there?
Progressive populist is what we consider ourselves. And so we have many democratic socialists who are with us, and we are always happy to work with them and collaborate with them. We recently collaborated with them on an action in Washington, D.C. But the party itself, we describe as progressive populist.
Thanks.
Ken Eisenstein is next.
And if I could just say one more thing, part of the reason that we do that is that in the US, one of the dynamics when you're building a major new party that you have to grapple with is that you have supermajority support for progressive policies. Like, you know, Bernie Sanders would go in front of a Fox News audience and he would get, you know, standing ovation for Medicare for all, or a Fox News poll coming out of the election, which has 72% support for Medicare for all. But when you ask people in the United States how they self-identify, you find that in the US, people self-identify essentially as, they identify their own views as center right or conservative. And so you have to kind of grapple with that distinction. And one of the best ways to do that is to, you know, not to go too far, to focus on the policies, because the policies build bridges, as opposed to focusing as much kind of on the ideological labels.
Okay, Ken, you're next.
I was wondering where the 60% figure came from.
Most recently, it comes from a Hill Harris poll, which I can post into the chat here. That was conducted in September.
Okay.
Next question is Susan T.
I have two questions. You said that you have 150,000 signed up members. So I wonder what it means to be a signed up member. And my second question is whether you are running any local candidates rather than going immediately to the national level.
Well, I think Tiffany would be great for these.
Thanks. We are still, to answer your second question first, we are running, we're still working on our candidate strategy because we're not quite a party yet. We're trying to figure out whether, how we can support our local candidates. We're working with a great candidate training team, strategy, recruitment, but we've got we're still working on the strategy for that. So we're going to try to support our local candidates, find a way to do that. But we haven't figured out exactly how that's going to look yet. As for what it means to be a member, my understanding is that we don't have dues yet. I mean, we haven't moved over to the party model. So it means that people have signed up as supporters and pledge their support to the People's Party or the movement for a People's Party. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Nick?
Could I just fill out that question by saying, what are they pledging to besides I support you? Is there a platform of agreements or something of what you're, what they're pledging to?
We do have an interim platform on our website, and I can post that into the chat as well. It's essentially Bernie Sanders' platform. And then in later this year, we're going to be having our founding convention, our founding convention committees working on that. And that will be in the second half of this year. It's our national founding convention where we'll bring all the states together. We will, and members will ratify the party bylaws and charter, as well as the platform. And so those final things will be determined for the party by the membership leading up to those, essentially leading up to that national convention.
Thank you.
Judy, you're next. Judy, are you here? Oh, you have to unmute.
There I was, muted, blabbering away, muted. So my question was about the labor movement. What are your connections with the labor movement? What's your strategy towards the labor movement? How do you see workers fitting in to the People's Party? And yeah, basically questions along that line.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Judy. We have a Labor for a People's Party circle, and they are organizing, they're our labor outreach committee. And we've been joined by the Vermont, by the AFL-CIO of Vermont. Their executive council voted to endorse and join us, as did the American Postal Workers Union of Vermont. We're very excited about that, to have both of their support. And our Labor for a People's Party outreach efforts are being coordinated by the president of the American Postal Workers of Vermont, Omar Fernandez. He was a speaker at the People's Convention. He's on our advisory council as well. And he's coordinating it with Todd Jellin, who is a leading member of the American Federation of Musicians. And they're reaching out to various different unions. We recently had a railroad union reach out to us, very interested in working with us. So we'll be talking to them. And we're kind of doing that consistently. They're reaching out to different unions, and we're speaking with them and inviting them to a labor, kind of like a labor caucus, so to speak, with Labor for a People's Party.
As historically around here, back when the Labor Party was functioning and trying to get on the ballot and stuff, there was quite a group of unions and stuff that supported the Labor Party. So I would think that would be a direction to go into, what unions were involved in the Labor Party back then.
Absolutely. Labor has been decimated by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, from the 40s and 50s to 35% unionization in the US to down to 10% today. And there are many people in the labor movement who are aware of that, you know, and they're interested, they want to break from the Democratic and the Republican parties. And so I think there is a lot of labor support there. We've also been coordinating, for example, with the former chairman of the Labor Party, Mark Dudzik, who now heads up the single payer, Labor for Single Payer campaign. And so we're definitely learning from everything that they've done, and individuals like him who participated in efforts like that are helping us now.
Great.
Okay, Susan, I know we're over time, but I want to combine two questions before we go into the breakouts. Sort of Becca and Wiley have both asked questions about what can we do to get the People's Party on the ballot in Massachusetts. Becca wonders how many signatures are needed, and Wiley just says, what can we do?
I'll take that question. There are two methods to get on the ballot, to get major party status in Massachusetts. And one way is to get enough members registered with the party. And the other way is to run a candidate for a statewide office that gets 3% of the entire vote cast. So what that comes out to, I'm not sure. For the 3% vote of the statewide vote cast, I'd have to go back and calculate that. For the party registrations, I don't have an exact number, but we need about 46,000 to make the 1% meet that threshold. So we have to put a couple of things in place before we can start that process. But we're hoping to roll out the ballot access plan here in Massachusetts in the coming weeks.
Doug, go ahead with the last question.
Okay, Ben, you've got the last question before we go into breakouts.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on to this, Nick and friends. What would it mean for the Green Party to join the People's Party? I'm wondering if you all see kind of the national infrastructure of the Green Party as like a potential asset if that formation were to align with the People's Party. I'm also kind of curious, like, figuring out what those internal left tensions are, if you see a sense of competition, or has, if that's come up in conversations with Green Party leaders, and how that all feeds into a left unity moving forward. Thanks.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We've hosted the Green Party at our convention, the one I mentioned with Dr. Cornel West in 2017, for example. They joined us. Jill Stein spoke. And you know, and I consider her a friend. And so we've collaborated. Our hubs have collaborated on the local level with the Green Party as well, and with Green Party activists. And so we're all for working together towards the objectives, you know, that we have, whether it's on policy, or whether it's on things like improving the rules for independent parties. At the same time, we believe that, of course, that the most successful route to a major new party, which is, you know, what the majority of Americans want now, which I think is evidently what we need now, looking at the Democratic and the Republican parties, looking at Joe Biden, the way he's even worse than Obama, didn't even promise, you know, any of the things that Obama did. Democrats don't even bother to promise, you know, I'm going to veto Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. Give me a break. And so, but looking at U.S. history, the most successful parties, like, for example, independent parties, are parties that come about and they, you know, they're newer parties. They're not parties that have necessarily kind of like been around for a long time. For example, the most successful independent party in the US was the Republican Party, because the Democrats and Republicans were not always the two parties that have been the major parties in the US. The new abolitionist Republican Party coming about in the 1850s and replacing the Whig Party in just a matter of 6 years, that was that was how slavery was abolished in the United States. Independent parties, I think, as most people know, have led on child labor rights, women's suffrage, the 40-hour work week, pushing Franklin Roosevelt into the New Deal. All these different things, in addition to that example of actually replacing a major party. And so we think that now what people will have the most confidence in is something new coming about. The Green Party, unfortunately, because it's been around for so long, has become synonymous with being marginal and with being kind of a niche environmental party. And those things aren't fair characterizations, but they are realities about how it's perceived. And that is why, for example,
what it would mean then for it to join, though. Yeah.
For it to join with us? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, obviously the individual members are welcome to join with us, or they're welcome to work with us in coalition as we have at the local level and elsewhere. And so, yeah, I mean, we welcome collaboration with other independent parties that share our values and our policies.
Thanks, Nick. I'm going to move us along because we try to keep to our numbers at times, even though we already are behind. So we will be on, we're going to go into breakout rooms until, David, until 3:04.
Set for 15 minutes.
Yep. So we'll be on until 3:04, and why don't we move that along?
Okay, here we go.
Hi, David. Is it supposed to only be 3?
You should be in, oh, not join. Let me see if I can get you into, okay, see what happens now. Can I? Ken, are you here?
Potentially break up over the current stress. In other words, I consider both the major parties right now are unstable. And we may be in a situation very much like the 1850 to 1860 period. Or later in the 1890 to 1910 party, when the swallowed Whig elements pushed out the progressives, the Republican Party, which ended up changing the Democratic Party. So I'm just saying, I think we can't be too clear on how we proceed until we see what happens with the major players. I mean, we don't know how, if the major parties are going to break up or how they're going to break up. into what pieces. So I just think it's important for us to be prepared, but we don't really know what's going to happen.
Okay, anybody else? John.
I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I did come prepared to talk about participatory budgeting, which is just an entirely separate proposal that FCCPR may want to join in on a campaign on in Greenfield. I don't know if we want to just say like, save 5 minutes at the end of the 15 to talk about that.
John, that's part of what we're going to be doing after this discussion occurs.
After,
it's part of our it's our part of our priority discussion.
This is a different. There's going to be a separate round of breakouts.
Yes, a separate round of discussions. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you. So never mind.
Edie, you're muted, Edie.
You're muted.
I thought you were in control of that. Sorry.
No.
As kind of new to politics, I have always tried to get the candidate that has the most savvy and practicality to get what I want. And thank you, Michael, for that history of the Whig Party and how that breakup, because what I do see from where I'm standing is that things are breaking up. And this is a very exciting proposition to have an organized function, but then I don't really know much about the other independent parties, the Green Party, the people, the several workers' parties. So I would hope that FCCPR would pay very much attention to how this party organizes, goes about moving forward, because absolutely everything it's mentioned in its platform is something that I would want to put myself behind. But I'd also want to take advantage of the major parties and how they're breaking up and use what you can as it does splinter away. And I don't know quite how that looks. Maybe nobody does. Maybe we do seem to be on the cusp of things really going in new directions and getting new ideas. And I just wanted to say that because I find it exciting, but I also am very nervous about how you help to really push an effort like this so it's meaningful, so it doesn't detract from candidates who could win because they've already got the establishment behind them. Does that make sense?
Okay, anybody else?
I've been sort of following it. I am quite taken with Nina and have listened to her a few times, so it interests me. I don't know what is wanted of FCCPR. I don't think we should give up our identity as a local grassroots organization, but I believe that we could have some kind of relationship without doing that.
Yeah, Penny, I think that's what we're thinking. Maybe we would have a task force, or we'll see how much interest there is. My question is, what do people, I guess, Phil, this might be for you, the squad, AOC and all those folks, and the new Progressive Caucus in the House, when do you see those people leaving the Democratic Party and joining us?
That's a good question. And will they leave the Democratic Party? So, part of our, longer term strategy is, yes, hopefully as we show ourselves to be a viable party, we will be able to woo some of the more progressive Democrats and progressive members of Congress over to come. A worst case scenario would be that, as we've seen, when you go to change the machine also changes you. So worst case scenario is that the machine could change them and further kind of dampen their progressiveness, so to speak. But yeah, overall, we'd like to woo some more progressive members of Congress over.
Anybody else?
I have just more of a question. I love what the progressive platform is, and I came in late to the meeting, so you may have talked about some of this.
but I was just wondering on the sense of, I understand that there are independents and Democrats who are very disenfranchised with the current parties, but I wonder about really progressives having I understand we want a voice, but really winning major elections like a presidential election. I mean, we saw what happened this year when we had 10 or however many Democratic candidates, and what happened to Bernie and Warren in the end, and what people went for was the center and tradition. So, and I don't really think anyone else, given the givens, I'm not sure anyone else could have gotten elected. So I really need, I'm trying to get a sense of really what, I understand that it's the issues, and I think that's great. I agree with issues, but how, is there really enough people who really want a progressive movement is kind of what I'm asking.
Is that to me or to the general group?
Well, it could be to anyone. I think it's really probably more to you. And I don't know, right.
I guess I think there's some extenuating circumstances. I understand what you're saying around this past election. You know, it feels like when given the choice, a large percentage of people preferred Bernie, but I think that a lot of people went to the center because of the electability argument, and more were voting out of fear than out of what they really wanted, to being so scared of, well, Bernie isn't electable, so to speak, even though, you know, the numbers kind of showed otherwise. But yeah, so I think this last election was kind of an outlier as far as what people are saying, or what people did and why. But that's a good question, you know, but what seems clear to me is that progressives will not be given a fair shot in the Democratic Party. That's what's become clear to me. That's why I left the Democratic Party and I'm working with MPP. Because it seems like at every turn, you know, over the last 4 years, I've seen it here locally. I tried to give the Democrats every last opportunity to do the right thing. And it seems like that the establishment, the machine, kind of puts its thumb on the scale to tilt things and rig things towards more centrism. So that's why I feel the need for a newer progressive party.
Susan.
Phil, could you talk a little bit about how MPP works with established organizations that are connecting in with MPP? Like what kinds of relationships do people develop?
So mostly what we're doing is building a coalition of groups, you know, of a coalition of support. So mostly that looks like collaborating on things like, you know, one of our working groups is Action, and we want to, you know, have the yin and the yang of electoral side of things as well as the direct action side of things. So we try to support organizations in their efforts with direct action and such. So that's what that looks like to me. Supporting other organizations and building that solidarity and getting our input on our platform and things like that from our coalition partners.
So I'll throw my 2 cents in. I haven't talked yet. Just, I mean, I agree with the critique of the Democratic Party. I think most of the people in FCCPR do. I spent a lot of time working on the building of the Labor Party, you know, for the union I work for. One thing I guess I worry about is the tendency to shoot at the top, to run a presidential candidate too soon. One of the things, you know, you always heard in the labor movement is that if you shoot at the king, you better not miss. And that was our guideline when we were planning campaigns against bosses. You had to come up with a plan that would work, because losing could be pretty devastating and people would lose their jobs. So, and I think we can't tell yet, but I worry about the thinking that we'll be ready to run a campaign in 4 years for presidency that could really win. You know, I worked on other presidential campaigns that our union endorsed. So I guess that's my worry, and thinking even that history of the Republican Party, you know, that it did come from the breakup of the Whig Party, and the Know Nothings Party. You know, there were a variety of parties that existed at the time. I actually spent some time looking at what was the state House of Representatives in Massachusetts looked like in 1854. And you could see there were people, you know, who were just leaving the Whig Party, the abolitionist wing. And even the Know Nothing Party, which is anti-immigrant, had an abolitionist wing, that people broke that party up. And those remnants formed the Republican Party in Massachusetts. But there were a lot of elected officials, people who had held state offices through those other parties. And so I tend to think that running people on a local level and building that base of locally elected people is very key, because it adds a credibility, you know, that we need to form a new party. And many local elections, at least in Massachusetts, you don't have to be a Democrat to run, right? They're nonpartisan elections. So those are the things I worry about. And I would rather have, you know, if the MPP was more avowedly socialist, I'd like that better too. Anybody else? Edie, and then we've got about 1 minute left.
Just an observation. It seems to be workable in terms of ranked choice voting. It seems more workable from my observation. I'm not sure. And it's interesting that Maine has both. It took on the People's Party and it also has ranked choice voting. If you have just a second to say how you're working with or against or ignoring that, Philip.
Yeah, that's on our platform, and it's one of I think the key things that will determine our success is ranked choice voting. So we support, you know, we plugged into it, you know, it was a little bit late, but we plugged in to support the ranked choice voting efforts there in Massachusetts and support that legislation across the country. And just wanted to respond to what David said quickly. We are focused on running mostly local and state level candidates. We're trying, you know, around 15 congressional level, but we're definitely more focused on running local and state level to use that as a springboard and build off of that because of everything you said.
Okay, we're about to leave. Everybody come back.
I think he was actually giving us another 2 minutes. I'm not sure how that worked exactly, but
well, we're back.
Whatever.
My countdown like kicked us out. It was like 10, 9, 8. So I got bounced. We got, you know.
Okay. Let's wait and see how many other people we've got.
Well, people will show up.
Just so folks know what the plan is to do a report back, 15 minutes, and which will bring us, and then from there go to priorities for 2021. And John is going to do a 5-minute presentation, and then we're going to, as one thing, and then we're going to talk about some other things that we want to, that people are thinking about.
Yeah, we got another. This is still our breakout room. We got another minute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, our breakout room is expanding, so that's kind of
well, gradually, but it's gonna actually go for a little less than a minute.
Well, Judy Atkins was trying to get a question into Nick if there's another minute.
Right now, Nick's not here.
Well, no, you left, Susan. You're back in the main room. Sorry.
No, I understand that. I thought everybody came back to this room.
I thought everyone did too. I don't. I had a little thing come up that said leave, like the countdown hit 0, and then I had to hit leave breakout room. I thought it bounced everybody back. I hope I didn't.
No, that's what I thought too. But apparently, when that timer hit 0, that gave us another 120 seconds, which is now up. And now all the breakout.
I had no idea.
Here we go.
So I just cut everybody off.
So now we know.
Okay.
It's okay.
So thank you all for coming back. What we'd like to ask now in the next 15 minutes, which will bring us to 3:22, is to kind of report back from each group about either any ideas in regard to CPR and People's Party, any Any questions that we need to explore more further, or any other, major issues? But we'd like to have one reporter back from each group if we could. So group one, which I think is you, David.
Okay, caught me unawares. I'll try and go through quickly the issues that were raised. People liked the idea of the new party, thought it really would depend on what's going to happen with the Democrats and Republicans. Is there going to be a breakup, and would people be leaving the Democratic Party? Let's see. People thought FCCP ought to pay attention to this and look and watch how the Movement for People's Party is organizing. People thought FCCPR, we shouldn't give up our identity as an organization, but that means we could work with MPP. Questions were asked about, will people like AOC and others in our progressive caucus, is there any sign of them leaving the Democratic Party? And the answer is sort of up in the air on that. And they're not giving any real signs right now. Several other questions circled around that idea. Is the breakup and is the move for people leaving the Democratic Party happening in a big enough sense to create a new party? The question was asked about how does MPP work with other groups, and that was answered by Phil about coalition building and supporting different groups in different areas on their collaborating on projects. It was noted that ranked choice voting, if that existed in Massachusetts, would probably really help candidates running as People Party members. That's it.
Okay, group two.
I think that's us. I'm not sure. I will say I was not as good at my note taking as Dave apparently was. So I'm a little, I think I was a little ADD making sure everyone had time to speak. We didn't really get to have a full discussion on one thing over another. There was a lot of stuff that was getting raised. It seemed like there is enthusiasm over a third party. I felt like that was a strong consensus. Susan Trillo raised the issue of how would MPP work with maybe local Democrats, and we certainly didn't reach an end point on that, but it's an issue that was raised. So I'm trying to look at what I did write down. I had asked how MPP is going to keep itself from being crushed by the machine that is the Democratic Party, because I do think that's a concern. And I got the sense for sure that that's something that the people of MPP are highly aware of, and they watched what happened to Bernie. And so that is a concern. In terms of ideas for how CPR might be involved, we didn't hit on that, but one thing I would like to raise now is I think at the very least, if there is interest to start, I think it would be really great if maybe within CPR, we have an education task force, we have the environmental task force. I think we should consider having a People's Party task force within the organization of CPR. So I'm just throwing that out there. I would really personally like to see that happen. So that's sort of the little thumbnail sketch from our group. You want to add anything, Wiley? You good? No. Okay, we're good.
There was a question raised about Nina Turner.
Yes.
So everybody admires Nina Turner. She's a great person, great candidate, great person that's supporting Bernie and Medicare for All movement. But I think, it hasn't been, I think she's still going to run as a Democrat because there's not a party. The party hasn't been recognized in Ohio and stuff. So I think there's still a question of, you know, going back and forth between progressive Democratic candidates and the birth of the People's Party.
Thank you, Judy, because I did forget that.
Okay, group 3.
Well, I'll start, and I hope if I miss something, people will jump in. There was a question about how does the People's Party focus on the local level, and there was an emphasis on really looking at what are the actual issues on the ground in front of people and attending to them as a major priority, and that since the party sees itself as a Main Street versus Wall Street, focusing on Main Street issues, which really cross lines that they're not Republican or Democratic issues, but they're actual people's issues. The focusing on issues is crucial. It was noted that Franklin County is more progressive than most of the other counties in Massachusetts, given the support that Bernie had in the last election. And so this might be a very prime time for organizing around here. Again, as an issue-centered party. There was some concern, of course, that of not splitting the Democrats in a way that ends up electing Republicans, so that's a concern, something to think about, recognizing that the issues are not Democratic or Republican, but the reality is that we have to be aware of that possible consequence. There was a strong push to contact the labor movement more strongly, or as strongly as possible, as encouraging connecting with them. And there was a question about, since most of us on the screen are white, a question about racial diversity and how diverse is the People's Party. And Tiffany was pretty clear that a number of the groups that have been set up, and a lot of the volunteers are diverse racially and ethnically. So though it's not in evidence so much here on our screen, that's definitely a consideration for the group. And if I missed anything, please somebody in our group jump in.
Okay, hearing none, let's go to group 4.
I think that's Anne.
Yes, okay. So our group had a number of people impressed with the vision of the People's Party looking at a national movement. And it's positive to see a new party as a pressure point toward the policies, the emphasis on the issues. There was a strong feeling, however, that it would be better to have what actually got mentioned by Karen, a People's Party task force within our group, the Fccpr, because we are worried about the fact we don't have ranked choice voting in Massachusetts, and it wouldn't be smart for us to join any party as an organization that would split progressive Democrats locally from progressive independents. So otherwise it would be a spoiler situation. And some of us weren't super interested in parties anyway, more on policies, that the strategy is key, and worried about the progressive Democrats and not wanting to have a third party undermine their position within the Democratic Party. So I think the general consensus was pleased to see this new force and energy and this new organization. More concerned at the moment, many of us, to be organizing more locally than a national third-party movement, but really willing to work in coalition with the People's Party, perhaps doing that kind of coalition with a task force of the Fccpr that was dedicated to that idea.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for their ideas. We're going to bring this back next time when we talk about priorities. Let me just bring up, because some people have left, we plan to hold a meeting on February 14th at 2, same time, same place, to begin talking about priorities, and this whole question of possible task force for the People's Party should be part of that discussion. I'd like to thank Nick and Phil, and I'm not sure if Tiffany's still here, but if she is, Tiffany, and if she's not, to thank her anyway, for being here with us. There's certainly a lot here for us to think about, and and you'll hear back from us one way or the other. So as David just put on the screen, the registration for the next GA, you'll get a notice from us via the mailing list to be able to discuss more thoroughly what the priorities are. So with that, we're going to do a quick 15-minute discussion of priorities. We have one person who has a kind of formed plan. We obviously have People's Party stuff that we want to talk about, but there may be some other things that may help us to be able to figure this all out. So thank you very, very much to our guests. And if you want to stick around, you can. If not, we understand that you have a life too. So thanks very, very much for everything from all of you, Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Yes,
everyone.
thank you.
It's been great speaking with you. And there are different ways that we could collaborate. You could choose to affiliate directly. You could choose to become a chapter. We could choose to form a partnership. We work in coalition with many different groups. So however you wanted to work together, if you did, we would love to work with you.
Nick, I'll be in touch with you. Thank you, because I think we do want to work with you in some form. Absolutely. I know I do. So
wonderful.
Right.
Thanks so much for having us on.
Nick.
Look forward to talking.
Okay, hi, I'm John McGee. I live in Greenfield. I'm just going to talk for 5 minutes here. Proposing to FCCPR that y'all would join me and a small group of which I'm a part in pushing for participatory budgeting in Greenfield. So we're primarily focused on Greenfield. There's definitely a possibility to expand beyond that if other folks were interested, but pretty much everyone in our small group of about 10 people is in Greenfield. So basically, real quick, I'll tell you sort of like what participatory budgeting is, what our hopes are for it, like what's motivating us in this campaign, sort of what we're hoping to actually achieve in Greenfield, and then maybe what FCCPR could help us with if you guys choose. So participatory budgeting, it's what it says. The name's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is that basically, as opposed to the current situation where the mayor holds primary control over the budget formulation of the budget, and then the city council approves it and has only like line item veto, then in participatory budgeting, actually like popular assemblies, like the citizens of the town have direct input on what the budget is. And there are lots of different ways that can look. It could be it could be binding, it could be actually like part of a formal process in the town. The way that it was where it began, which was actually in Porto Alegre in Brazil. It could also be sort of like non-binding. So this would be more like the People's Budget LA. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but that's sort of like, an activist group has like particular goals. They get a lot of people to, thousands of people to give input and sort of vision this budget. And then they present it as a demand from the outside to the existing government structure. And the input comes from like assemblies, often organized by neighborhood, also often organized around like particular groups to try to get input from especially people who are otherwise marginalized by the electoral process, surveys and door knocking and canvassing and all that. one of the benefits of it, of course, is that like it's a lot more fine-grained of a campaign to sort of get what you want, as opposed to electoral politics where you're choosing sort of like one box or the other. In this, actually, people have the opportunity to propose ideas, to sort of participate in the process of building them out as ideas for institutions and programs in the town. And then it also builds in a certain amount of accountability too, from the elected officials who are like required to actually like, you know, make good on these budget priorities and budget programs that people propose. Another benefit is that it actually has broad appeal across political lines, and it offers an opportunity to sort of get past, again, like, you know, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? You know, a lot of policy ideas that are considered progressive are actually like enjoy broad support. So this gives an opportunity for people to sort of express their support for those programs outside of the sort of binary election. And also there's like lots of civic education, and people then start to understand what the budget is and all that. I will say also, if you have any questions, I and a couple other folks from my group are going to be in the breakout group so we can talk further. I realize I'm coming to the end of the 5 minutes. So the idea, pretty simply, that we would put to you guys is just, we would ask for, you know, to partner on sort of mobilizing your membership and other networks, other folks you know, to participate, also to like generate support, to help to push candidates for the city council and mayoral office, and the current elected officials to sort of follow through on honoring the demands that people have through the budget process. Yeah, and then also running some civic education and sort of like budget education events. So yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you, John. So just once again, we want to take a few minutes here for people to throw out specific ideas on what we should be working on in 2021. You know, we have task forces on various issues, but those, you know, the pandemic has taken its toll on people, those functioning of those task force and what people can do. So what we want to do now is make a list of issues. As said, on February 14th, we're going to have a much bigger discussion on the list of issues that come up. And we're going to want that discussion to be specific, more specific, not just say we want to work for climate justice, but specifically what issues do people want to work on, and have that discussion how we're going to work on them. Given that we may still be in this pandemic mode for a little while more, but hopefully not forever. So if people could raise your hand if you have an issue that you want to go on that list, and that'll have much further discussion at our next February 14th meeting. And I got to switch back and forth between screens to try and see if people's hands are up. David.
Well, I guess a lot of people know that Green New Greenfield and FCCPR are co-jointly putting on a series of forums about housing. So clearly that's something some of us are getting into, and I hope that that will become another priority, a task force or something for CPR in the coming year.
Great. Anybody else?
Dave?
Yeah.
Hello.
Karen.
The three of us here, we just, I mean, I said it, but just officially, the three of us feel very strongly People's Party in some capacity needs to be on that list.
Okay. I had it already.
I figured you did. You know me. All right.
Penny.
I think it might be too late about the transparency bills, but if you haven't contacted your legislator in the State House about the transparency bills that are up for voting, give them a quick call, because transparency would really help every single organization that needs to get the attention of their legislators for local problems. Because what happens in our state house is that the people bring their issue to their legislators. The legislators go into committee and it dies. And when you ask them what happened, they said, well, it went into committee and it died. And there's no transparency in the committees. So there's a big thing about that has been going on for a while.
Okay. I myself would throw out the idea that we should continue. Oops, Judy, you had your hand up. Right. You're muted.
So maybe you were going to say the same thing, but like to continue our work for Medicare for All in Massachusetts. The same thing as Penny said is that we're now submitting new legislation into the new legislative term in Massachusetts for Medicare for All. The bill is essentially the same. It has some small changes to it, but again, we're lining up sponsors and co-sponsors and trying to create an active Medicare for All caucus in the House and the Senate. And through MassCare, the statewide organization, we've now built a bunch of hubs in other areas of Massachusetts. So like previously, it looked like Western Mass was leading the way on Medicare for All, but now we have a bunch of sister hubs in Worcester and in Boston and Pittsfield and other areas and stuff. So to continue our work on Medicare for All, and especially doing education on the effect of not having Medicare for All on people's lives during COVID-19. Then, so that's my pitch.
Okay, yeah, you took my thunder. Doug?
3 related education issues. One is the MCAS, and the idea of an MCAS at any time is a disaster, but especially in the middle of a pandemic. Second is adequate funding for schools, and working towards that. And the third has to do with racial justice in our education system, and actually everywhere else, but focusing specifically within the schools.
Great. Ferd?
Yeah, I don't have a specific thing, but I do think it's really important that we continue having a presence in the climate movement. And I think what we've done, the Climate Task Force has done good work, but hasn't had a real clear local target. And so I'm hoping maybe between now and the next GA, our task force can convene and come up with a specific proposal.
Okay.
That would be great.
I would add to this list, continuing our work on the fair taxation movement in Massachusetts, which will be heading towards a ballot question for taxing the 1% and taxing corporations. And we did work on that, and now that it'll be coming around again to get it on the ballot. So I would move we do that.
Dave, can I add one more?
Okay, hold on. Pamela?
I wanted to say something.
Who's?
Dorothy.
Okay, Pamela, then Dorothy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about criminal justice reform. It's a big concern of mine, I know. And then I also want to reinforce, the gridlock that's down there at the State House is huge. I know personally it's a mess. It has been, and year after year. So I encourage anyone to get on Act on Mass website and find out more about it, and you'll be shocked, or maybe you already know. In terms of that, the gridlock that's going on down in Washington, D.C., of course, we all know about that. And Move to Amend just had a meeting that I attended. And I believe it's Move to Amend for /117/campaign. And it looks identical to what I'll be doing and have been doing through working to try to fix the State House transparency problem. And it's almost the exact same thing. We have a meeting tomorrow with Representative Paul Mark. So actually that's for Boston and area, but the same thing is going on with getting a hold of people down there in Washington, D.C. It's, you know, you could practically carbon copy the whole thing on your efforts. You're just changing it from national to state. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy?
So on a local level, transportation is still a big issue in terms of not having evening or weekend transportation, particularly for people who work on schedules where they can't get to work. And it keeps coming up and nothing has happened with that yet. And I know the pandemic is affecting a lot of things, but I think that that's important for our area and particularly for our rural areas to really figure that out. And also a lot of businesses are closed because of the pandemic, and that how can we make sure that our local businesses have support starting up again, and that new businesses will be able to come back to get on board when we come out of this. What's our town going to look like, and what role might we have in that?
Okay.
Dave, can I add one more?
Yes, Karen.
One thing we may want to keep an eye on too is just the growing surveillance and domestic terror laws that we're now starting to see, you know, especially since the whole Capitol thing. Basically just kind of keeping an eye that we're not going down a road of Patriot Act 2.0. You know, nationally, sure, but certainly locally, I think we should see if there's whatever is in our power to do and really raise awareness about that. And then also maybe the eviction moratorium.
Yes. Great.
And Penny, and I think Penny has her hand up.
Penny. Go ahead, Penny.
Okay.
We have 1 minute left, I think.
This is just a suggestion in terms of process. We might be able to make some innovative use of the internet to our benefit in terms of gaining, doing some good for the area and gaining some confidence from people who otherwise don't think of themselves as political. If we brainstorm about using internet possibilities.
Okay. Anyone else? So I think what we'll be doing, we'll be sending out a notice for the February 14th meeting. And we'll also have, when you sign up for that, like you signed up for this one, space where people could put in any other issues that didn't come up here. We'd like to know ahead of time so we can figure out how to organize that discussion come the 14th. So I think Anne, last.
Just, I don't know if this is something for us, but the universal basic income, it just seems to me to be a really important national policy question. I don't know how we might make it relevant to Massachusetts.
Okay. All right, I think Susan, we're done.
And obviously we're gonna dismantle capitalism, right?
Okay, next
Put that on the list, Dave.
That goes without saying.
A little too general.
Okay, folks, I want to thank you all very, very much. We try to keep as close as we can to what we promised to do. We know that Zoom can be a little exhausting over time. So thank you all very much. We hope you'll come back and join us on the 14th when we can take a look at some of these issues and figure out but what we want to do and who wants to do them.